we're going to start with the 19th prayer that was instituted by Shmuel HaKatan. We know that the Shmonesrei, the daily prayer, is called exactly that. It's called the 18 blessings. But in reality, if you go look at the siddur, you'll find that there are 19 blessings. The reason why there are 19 blessings is because there is an added blessing right here. It's coming in as the against heretics. Sorry, it's the focus here is wacky. The against heretics prayer. So it says v'lam al shinim al tihi sikva b'chol aminim keregi ovedu b'chol ove amcha meher karesu. That's the first half. And for those who slander us, let there be no hope. And all the minim is translated as heretics, shall be gone. And all the enemies of your people should be cut down. And then it continues, and this is not a friendly prayer, and it was only instituted because of challenges that arose in, I guess, sectarian streams of Judaism that were essentially, in the eyes of the rabbis, breaking away with core beliefs of what we thought and turning on their fellow Jews and handing them into, I guess, the Romans or whoever they were. And I think some people say they were early Christians. Again, this is not like, it's not, when we say it today, we're not having in mind Christians. It was actually the what it may have been is it may have been the new faiths that were hard to easily distinguish between the existing faiths, and at that point it was so almost dangerous to figure out who was who and if Judaism would even continue, that they instituted this prayer. But enough about the history. Let's look at the actual story in the Talmud. Maybe that will shed some light on this question of what this is. Okay. So here's what the Talmud says. The story begins at the end of Chaf Chesamid Beis. The Gemara says, I don't know why this thing's flipping out. This maybe I'll make it larger so I could focus it better. Okay, there we go. So the Gemara says as follows. Tanu Rabbanan Shimon HaPekuli Histi Yudches Brachot Lefnei Rabbi Gamliel Al Seder B'Yavna. A particular rabbi named Shimon HaPekuli, he basically structured or restructured or refined the structure of the 18 blessings for Rabbi Gamliel al HaSeder, meaning on this order, presumably the order that we have today in Yavna. Rabbi Gamliel asked the sages, who amongst you could possibly enact an additional blessing, the blessing against the heretics that I just read some of for you? Amad Shmuel HaKatan v'sikna, Shmuel, the humble one, arose and he instituted it. He created the liturgy, the wording for it. Lashana Aferes, the following year, okay, this is where we begin, Chavtes Amud Aleph, 29a. I'm sorry, it's acting a little weird today. The live feed is just I don't know why it's doing that. It's just all over the place. Maybe there's too many people using the internet in this in this community because of the coronavirus, so it's getting a little choppy. Okay, here's a better focus. So he was in the middle of leading the services. He was the chazan one day. And he forgot his own prayer, the prayer on the minim, on the heretics. And for 2 or 3 hours, below Ha'alua. And they didn't, usually there's a thing, in particular for that blessing, if somebody is stumbling and not able to say it, we are choshesh, we suspect that maybe a little bit of minus, a little bit of this kind of false beliefs fell into them. And we just immediately take them down when we see that they're not able to like say it, because we don't want them to, represent the kahal. So here they gave him 2-3 hours. So the question is, Amai and then I guess eventually he remembered it. Amai Luo, why didn't they bring him down? V'amar Rabbi Yehuda Amar Rav Ta b'chol habrachot kulon ein malin oso. Rabbi Yehuda, in the name of Rav, says if you make a mistake in any of the other blessings of the Shemona Esrei, you don't bring that person down and get a new replacement. However, bebirchas haminim malin oso. In the case of the blessing of the heretics or against the heretics, we do replace the chazan if the person can't, starts can't get it out of that blessing. Why? Because chashin and shema minhu. We suspect that person maybe is a heretic. My apologies. So the question is, why didn't we do that for Shmuel HaKatan and replace him? Why didn't the community replace him at that moment that he couldn't? It took him 3 hours. I mean, they had a long time to replace him. So the Gemara says, well, first of all, there's an interesting observation that it could be that nobody else knew the blessing because they didn't have siddurim, that they didn't write down the words, they just knew it by heart. So, but let's leave that aside. Continue the Gemara. Says, Shani Shmuel HaKatan Di'iu Tikna. Well, it was different here because he himself was the one who instituted the blessing. However, the Gemara says, let's suspect that he retracted his feelings against the minim, and maybe, God forbid, he joined them in his heart. We have a tradition that a good person doesn't go bad. This is part of number 2 of can a tzadik go bad? And there's a debate. The Gemara asks, is that so below? Is that so? V'haksiv uveshuv tzadik mitzidko v'asa avel. Isn't there a verse that says a righteous person can turn from their goodness and do crookedness? And that means nobody can be trusted to ever be a tzaddik forever. They always have to be, know that they can fail. People around them can also know that even a great person can fail. So the Gemara answers, "Ahu rasha mi'ikaro." That's referring to somebody who was a rasha, became a Baal Tshuva and a tzaddik temporarily, and then that person could always go back to their earlier state of being a rasha once again. Aval tzaddik mi'ikaro, but somebody who was always a tzaddik, that person doesn't fall. V'lo, the Gemara challenges that Vatznan. Don't ever trust yourself. Don't ever be assured of your own holiness. As an example, the story of Yochanan Kohen Gadol is he was a great sage. He was a great Kohen Gadol, and he was faithful for 80 years, and then after that, at the end of his days, he became a tzaduki. He became a follower of a group that didn't believe in the same belief systems as the rabbis. What exactly a tzaduki is something I've discussed before, and I will discuss again. I'm not going to get into it right now. It's not the same as a min. I'm really sorry about this. It seems like it's a very weird connection. It's giving me like a little bleeping thing. Anyway, I'm going to just continue. I'm hoping this is working. Let me know if you guys can even hear me. Just write a little message that you can hear me clearly. I'm hoping the sound is clear, even if the visual is a little choppy. Damn that. Sorry, guys. It's just all over the place. Okay, let's put that down for a minute. I'll look at something else. We'll look out the window for a minute while I explain those number one and number two. So number one was a little bit about this thing about the heretics and about this story, how it was almost forgotten. And some of the commentators, there's a contemporary commentator, I believe I don't know what his name is. I think I saw it brought down in the Yosef Das with I believe the abbreviation of his name is R Ayin Chaf, which would be something like Akiva Cohen, but I don't know if it is Rabbi Akiva Cohen, somebody who's still alive, at least at the time of the printing of the Sefer Yosef Das, who is a contemporary rabbi living in Israel. So he brings down this rabbi who says that perhaps we could understand that this wasn't simply that he forgot the prayer. The whole idea of having a prayer, that's the 19th prayer, and why do we not then call it the 19 blessings? Why do we call it the 18 blessings? The simple answer is, oh, well, they first instituted 18, and then the 19th was kind of an afterthought or a response to something that happened that needed to be addressed, but it wasn't part of the original, so we only count the original. But there's a better answer than that. I don't know, better, but a different answer. The other answer is that the idea of a negative blessing is almost like verging on the inappropriate. So we don't want to even acknowledge it as one of the blessings. So it's like there's the Shmon Esrei, there's the prayer of 18 blessings. Oh, well, what about this other one that make it 19? Well, whatever, it's there. We say it, but we don't count it as one of the 18. So that's really the uneasiness that the rabbis must have had. They felt compelled to do it, and they felt guilty about doing it at the same time. This contemporary rabbi, maybe Akiva Cohen, we'll find out what Ayin Chaf stands for. What name of a rabbi that might stand for. This contemporary rabbi suggests that he wasn't simply that he forgot it, like the simple pshat of the Gemara, but rather he was spending a couple of hours deciding whether this is really an appropriate prayer. Like the idea of excluding people from the community of Israel is very harsh, even if they have problematic faiths. But just to put those people on the outside and pray for bad things for them, he had to kind of assess whether that's still needed. In other words, it could be, as the author of the prayer, and one of the things he's known, I believe he says in Pirkei Avos, also quoted by this rabbi, is "B'nafal ovecha al tismach." When your enemy falls, don't rejoice. In other words, great, okay. When your enemy is running, I'm going to move my things here. When your enemy is running low, is failing or falling, don't get happy about it. So he was the opposite of the person. There's some people who they gloat when their enemies are having a hard time. This was not the case for Shmuel HaKatan, and he was selected because of his humility. In other words, he was just a very humble person. He was a very special person. And therefore, perhaps you can say that the reason why he spent 2 or 3 hours not simply not knowing the prayer, but rather much deeper, rethinking whether the prayer is proper. And then he went back to it. Of course, that is not the pshat. You could say, well, that's not at all what the Gemara says, and you'd be right, because the Gemara says he forgot, and then questions why they didn't bring him down, which is a whole nother question, is if somebody is asked to do something, does that make him in charge of it? Can he take it back? Like, had he said, you know what, I think this is not a good idea, this prayer anymore, would the rabbis have even listened to him? He was commissioned to make the prayer, not to decide whether the prayer should be said or not. So that's another question. And I am really sorry about how spotty this videoing is today. The second one that we were talking about, no, that's a little bit better. Okay, I hope this works. I'm sorry, people. The second one that we were talking about is this concept of whether a rasha, a tzadik mi'ikaro, can become a rasha or not. And it's a subject of a debate between Abaya and who's the other rabbi? And Rava. So Rava basically says that even a tzadik mi'ikaro can become a rasha. And the answer is Shmuel HaKatan is different. Is Shani Shmuel HaKatan the Aschaba? In the case of Shmuel HaKatan, is he actually started saying it. He knew the beginning of it, and then he in the middle at some point he didn't remember it. Damar Yehuda Amarav, Vitem Rav Yeshua ben Levi, Lo Shanu El Shelo Hischaba Gamra. If somebody is saying the bracha of the Al Haminim for against the heretics, and he starts saying it, and then in the middle of it he can't remember it, then you don't bring him down. You give him some time to try to figure out what he's saying. So what's this thing about? Let's talk about this fascinating concept of a tzadik mi'ikara, a righteous person that was righteous from his or her youth, and it just can't. And then later on in life, they don't have bechira. They don't have free choice, which would be a question if you're like a big Rambam person and you really believe in free choice. What exactly is the reconciliation of this idea that a tzadik mi'ikara, according at least to the opinion of a Rava, is kind of like guaranteed to be righteous their whole life? So the first answer that I would give you is there's one of the greatest works of Hasidus is the Tanya of the Alter Rebbe of Chabad. And the premise of the first book, which is by and large considered the most important book, it's actually got like 5 sections in it. But the first is this book called Sefer Shel Beinanim, which right from the outset in the first few chapters of the book, he outlines the differences between a tzaddik v'tovlo, a tzaddik v'ralo, a tzaddik who is good to him or her and not good to him or her, and a Beinani, this person that's, so to speak, a in-between person, and then the rasha v'tovlo, the rasha v'ralo, these 5 categories. And then right off the bat, he explains that when we talk about, he's not interested in the tzaddik that's 51% righteous and 49% wicked. That's not what he's talking about. In fact, he has this amazing chiddush where the tzaddik is somebody who doesn't sin at all. Even the Beinani doesn't sin at all, but the tzaddik, the true tzaddik, the tzaddik gomer, doesn't even have like desire in his or her heart for things that would be eventually be considered a sin in action. He doesn't even, but forget about thinking about it. He doesn't have it in his like unconscious mind, which would then explain why somebody who's a tzaddik, especially a tzaddik gomer, on the level that the Tanya is talking about, it doesn't have bechira chafshis. So when we talk about bechira, bechira is the bnei aliyah, which is this kind of high level, the tzadik gomer, which is very few in a generation that we talk about. Yeah, they actually wouldn't have real bechira to become a rasha because they really are good through and through. So that would be one of the answers for, that's why they say that the Alter Rebbe of Chabad wrote the book of Tanya with a number of quotes from different Talmudic things that are, like good questions for a Talmudist to ask, and that would get somebody who's not interested in Hasidus but says, "Oh, this is some valid concerns that I want to find out." So this is one of the answers based on the Tanya. Okay, so let's continue with number 3. Give me a moment here. I want to get my notes. Okay. Of all things, I must have done something wrong because the Tanya dropped on the floor. So I don't know. It should be forgiven. Okay, the number 3 is earlier forms of abbreviated prayer, Shemon Esrei, and a little bit of whether or not they're worth rediscovering or re-exploring, whether we should use them in a crunch. The Gemara says as follows, number 3. I'm going to have to look this way. My me'ain Shemon Esrei, Rab Amar me'ain kol bracho bracha. What is this me'ain, like some of the Shemon Esrei? The Gemara is quoting from the Mishnah. And it says, Rav says, me'ain kol bracho bracha. You make like an abbreviated form of each blessing, but you conclude each blessing with Baruch Atah Hashem, Shomei Tefillah, or you include each blessing with Hashem's name, or Baruch Atah Hashem Rofei Chol Am Yisrael. And then the beginning of it is much more condensed, just a few words. It doesn't actually say how that would play out. B'Shmuel Amar Havinenu Hashem. Now Shmuel actually plays out what his Me'ain Shemon Esrei would be, his kind of like abbreviated form of the Shemon Esrei. So you'd say the first 3 brachos of the Shemon Esrei fully, and then you'd say the following that would be in the place of the 12, really 13, right? It was 13 plus 6 make 19, which is really how many it is. And this is how it would go. Havinenu Hashem Elokeinu l'das darchecha, right? That's the bracha for atachon and ladam das. You grant a person, grant us this type of das, this deep understanding to know your ways. Umolas laveno lirasecha, and circumcise our hearts so that we'll fear you. What comes after chonin hadas? Then comes hachsienu, return us in tshuva, v'sislach lanu liaskulim, and then it comes for forgive us that we should be redeemed. So that's for forgiveness, for geula, v'rachakinu mechavenu, and keep us far from pains and illness. So that's instead of the rifa'enu, instead of the blessing for healing, or it's a 2-word version. Keep us far from illness. V'dashnenu binos artzecha. The lighting is bad here, so I can't see. Binos artzecha. So that is about satiating us with goodness in the land. On the futzaseinu barbakamfos, the gathering us from the 4 corners. The kabetz fatom al daitcha yeshivenu. That's for those who make mistakes. Yishpatu should be judged, as the bracha for Hashiva Shoftenu. Valarishayim Tanif Yadecha, for the wicked to lift your hands. I guess that's for the minim, or the tome. There's the tome and the Rishayim. V'yismuchu tzadikim b'vinyan irecha. That's the bracha for the tzadikim, that you should rejoice in the rebuilding of your Jerusalem. Uvesikun heichalecha, and the fixing of your courtyard. It's very poetic, and that's the reflowering of the Davidic dynasty and the candelabra of Ben Yishai your Mashiach. Terem nikra ata sa'ana baruch Hashem shemet tefillah. That's before you even call out to God. God will answer. Blessed are you, God, who hears our prayer. So that's actually called Havinenu. Abaye didn't like when people use that, according to the commentaries. He didn't like it when they abused it. The point of the Havinenu, the Gemara says, I didn't read this inside with you, is this is basically what one would do if one was in a hurry and they didn't have time to do the whole Shemona Esrei. So the question becomes now, you're not going to find this in any siddur, but you have a lot of kids with ADD. You have a lot of adults with ADD. Their mind is super wandering. They're super busy, or they're not even busy, but they just can't daven. Is there a rabbi of a good standing in terms of their of people will listen to them, who would be willing to re-offer this as an option? What would be the guidelines of who could say it? One could say it. Would it be something that kids under bar mitzvah could do a shorter version of the Shemona Esrei, or is that a bad chinuch? This is a good question. I don't have the answers. We're going to continue because we have top 10, not one. Any one of these things, they're fascinating. We could do any one as this one and only topic. Number 4 is the practicality of when the rabbis instituted tefillah, did they have the practicality of what somebody would remember or not in mind? And the answer is yes, they did. So the Gemara says, Maskav Lamar Sutra. There's a whole discussion about whether this Havinenu, this kind of abbreviated form, where all the middle blessings are just crunched into those 4 lines that I just spent 5 minutes reading to you, whether you can say them, for example, when it's Saturday night, because where would be the appropriate way to fit in the Havdalah? We say a form of Havdalah in Atachon and Ladam Das, but there is not really an easy way to fit that in, and there's a whole discussion in the Gemara about that. And then there's also a conversation about how you do Brachos Hashanim in terms of filling in the whether the request for Mashiv Haruach Amar Geshem like that, or the saying the saying Talamat Levracha, right? For the saying Talamat Levracha in that Havinenu. So the Gemara says, V'nichlala michlal v'dishnenu binos artzecha v'sein talamater. Why don't we put the part of the blessing for the weather in the winter, in the rainy season, in that section where it mentions the goodness of the land? Just add in v'sein talamater, right? Or v'sein talamater l'bracha, the way I say it, and others. So the Gemara says, no, asig latrude. By putting that in there, it's going to get confusing. The Gemara says, I mentioned before that they were trying to put in words in that section, in the beginning of that section, to mention the Havdalah on Saturday night. So if you can't do that either, because that'll also be confusing. The Gemara says, no, that's not, you can't compare them. So since that's towards the beginning of the Shemona Esrei, at least the beginning of that section of the intermediate section, lo mitrad, the person's mind won't get confused. Here, when you're talking about this thing, that's towards the middle. That's going to confuse the person. The bottom line is, we see that when we can't just go and make stuff up, even the rabbis, if they're concerned that it's not practically going to be remembered. They didn't have siddurim back then, so just throwing in a few extra words would, at the wrong time, could make things complicated, and that would be the reason why they didn't do it. So a lot of times we think that the rabbis instituted whatever they instituted as some ideal that has nothing to do with the reality. In this case, that's simply not the truth. They had in mind what people could remember or not, because the whole idea of prayer, if you look at the Rambam, is that we're trying, and that's going to lead me to not number 5 or 6, that's number 4, but number 7, 8, 9 is going to be connected to this concept of the rabbis are trying to help us when they make the tefillah, when they make the tefillah come into particular nusach, particular liturgy. The problem is that as much as it helps us, it also can hurt us when we fall into bad habits of what davening is. And that's what the next page is primarily going to deal with. At least I'm going to help show you what that's all about. But let's first do that's number 4. Let's focus for a few minutes on 5 and 6. Okay. So interesting. I can't. This is like a new toy. I'm not so good at it. Oh, there we go. That's better. Okay. So number 5 and 6, that was number 4. Number 5 is when you forget certain things in the Shemon Esrei, what do? So basically, the Gemara tells us the following. Amar of Tanchum, Amar of Asi, Tavlo Hiskik Vrus Kishama B'Tchias Amesim, Machsianoso, Shaila B'Brachos Hashanim Ein Machsianoso, Neshiyachal Amar B'Shomei Tefillah. Okay, so basically, what we're saying here is that there's 2 times that we mention what we want the weather to be like, right? And I'm not gonna, you know what? I'm just not gonna. I'm not gonna look at the. I'm not gonna look at the Gemara for a few minutes. I'm just gonna tell it to you from my memory because that's what I feel like doing right now. So you'll remember that we just switched out for asking for rain to asking for dew, right? We say v'sein bracha instead of v'sein tal or matar lebracha. Instead of asking for dew and rain, we just ask for v'sein. That we just ask for the same bracha. We ask for, just give us a blessing in the Birchat Hashanim, in the section of the time of year and the type of weather we would like. Interestingly enough, you'll see that switch is more gradual on Sukkot, Shmini Atzeret. We don't switch out from the same bracha then to v'sein tal umatar levracha. We change that out later in late December. But we do switch out in the second bracha of the Shemon Esrei. We do already say that mashiv haruach umarid hageshem. Right? We already do say that then. And the question is why, and the Gemara discusses it. What it is that the second blessing is more of a praise of God, and the blessing in the middle of the Shemon Esrei for the weather is more of a direct request. So that's one distinction between those 2 parts of the prayer in terms of one is shvach, one is praise, and the other one is bakasha, is request. Because again, we divide the Shemon Esrei into 3 compartments. The first part is praise of God. The middle section is requests of God, and the last section is acknowledging God and being thankful for what He's given us. So the first section, the first 3 brachot, are considered the more primary in the sense that if you leave out some part of that, you gotta. It's like the Shemon Esrei didn't really count. So, for example, according to and this is what gets to number 6. There's a difference between the Bavli and the Yerushalmi. The Bavli says that if you miss out
on the second blessing of mentioning Mashiv HaRuach, right? You don't mention the rain, and you have a chazan. So why can't you just listen to the chazan's repetition of the Shmon Esrei and you'll be yotze? According to the Yerushalmi, you can, I believe. I'm just doing this from memory. Not that I know the Yerushalmi, I don't. I just looked up some stuff here. According to the Yerushalmi, you can just listen to the Chazan, and when he says that, when he says it, you'll be yotze. According to the Bavli, you can listen to the Chazan only for Birchat Hashanim if you missed it there. But for the second blessing, the Shemon Esrei, you listen to the Chazan doesn't help. So what's the difference? The difference is that it could be that the Rabbi Soloveitchik and others talk about a difference. It could be that the first three blessings of the Shemon Esrei, they're essential. They're not just like a request that you're missing. Like you ask for a lot of things, and you should kind of fill them in. So that could be why you could. So that's one difference. Another difference is you could fill it in Shomei Tefillah. Shomei Tefillah is a generic blessing that God should hear your prayers, and you could add in anything you need in that prayer. So you could add in Ya'aleh V'yavo. Actually, Ya'aleh V'yavo comes later, so let's not talk about that. I'm getting. You could add in V'sein Talamat L'Vracha there, but you can't add in the same idea from the first this time that the weather is mentioned, because there it's not a request. There it's part of the praise of God, and the praise of God and requesting are two separate things. So that's a little bit about number 5 and number 6. There's a lot more on that, and just because this thing has kind of been giving me a hard time, and I'm like purposely not looking at the Gemara right now, so it should just kind of settle down. I'm going to move on to number 7, 8, 9, and 10, because I'm not going to use the Gemara so much because of how choppy it was when I'm trying to read it from the Gemara. So number 7 is the following. Okay. Number 7 is, the Gemara says, don't make your, this is the more interesting part of it, okay? Don't make your prayer kava. Kava means like fixed. So there's 4 interpretations of what that means, and we're gonna spend the next 20 minutes or so talking about those 4 interpretations of what to do to spice up your davening life, because that's a very important part of life. It's probably the most important part of your life on some level. Your relationship with God. I mean, it's a big deal. I know you have a relationship with God in B'chol Derechecha Do'ehu, know God in all of your ways, and of course we have the Holy Shabbos, and we have mitzvot regarding family and V'ahavta L'Reacha Kamecha, loving people, and having a good friend, and having a good wife, and a good husband, a good your partner that you love, your children. All of those things are gewaldig, but there's something important, essential, about the power of being able to connect through your words and through your heart, through inner avoda, through inner work of the soul, with the Ribbon Shalom, with the Master of the world. And we're given many forms of doing this, but arguably the most important form of this is tefillah. And the rabbis knew that there was and is a trap that we're going to fall into, which is one of 4 things happen, and we need to fix it. We need to realign and do it so that we merit to get this really deep connection to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And I say this because I had the merit to have people who I learned from what davening is really about. Um, Not everyone had that. I understand. We didn't all have role models, and um, my grandfather, Rabbi Carlebach, when he would daven, you would feel the way you would talk to somebody when you're in love. Like the beginning of love, when the love is very intense. So that's how you would kind of feel the energy that he was putting into his davening. He was talking to his beloved. That's the person who taught me how to daven. I had other great teachers about davening also. Not the only one, but really just mind blowing. And he did it privately mostly. He didn't. I mean, he davened with the minyan. He davened on his own, but it's he wasn't making a thing. He was just, this is what he did. It wasn't that he was leading the community per se in the davening. He did also that, but his main avoda was just privately davening in this beautiful way. But he's not the only one. Some of my teachers of davening are simple people, women from different parts of the Sephardic world who have this just simple emunah, the simple faith, and men as well. They're just like they're coming with like this real purity of their emunah, of their faith in God is very, very strong. And when you hear them davening, and it's just very impressive, their level of faith. Okay, let's get to these four things here. So the first of them, which is number 7 on my list, which is learning how to talk to God in a non-habit forming way. So the first reason the first reason of what keva means is that when the prayer becomes like a burden. We all know the difference between a burden and a delight. One difference is, for example, a burden. Um, I I go shopping and I carry my stuff from Fairway, and rather than take an Uber or a taxi, which I try to avoid now when I can, um, I carry everything, but it gets heavy. So at a certain point, just like, oh, this is heavy, and I'm like, I can't wait to put it down. So when davening becomes like that to you, that's a problem. Because what that essentially means is that you don't have any joy. It's just a burden. And it's just one of the reasons why it's a burden is because it's just a habit. Now you could say, what do you mean? It's a good habit. No, it's not. There's a word in psychology for um, habituation, which is when something becomes by route boring, um, something that's not exciting anymore. And when we daven again and again, 2, 3 times a day, it becomes a routine, and in the routine, it loses passion. And now the thing is, I think I gave a shear once that davening is exactly like a relationship. That's the beauty of davening. If you want a relationship to grow stale and old, all you need to do is treat it like davening. Meaning, your davening is stale and old and boring, and your relationship is stale and old and boring. And or you could go deeper. My friends, if you want to be good at something in life, stop being so freaking superficial. Stop being so boring. If you want to be good at a relationship, you suck at it, it's probably because you're a boring person and you're just boring each other to death because you don't want to get interested in each other's depth. You have depth, your partner has depth, and you're just lazy. It just comes down to that. That's all it is. It's called laziness, not willing to go the extra mile. We are talking about some deep people here, but if you're lazy, then you're going to be boring, and then you're going to be bored. And that's the same thing that happens in davening. If you're lazy, you're going to get bored, and you're going to do it as a habituation. And that is what happens to so many of us, including me. I am part of the problem. I don't have the answers. I actually do have the answers. I just don't walk. I don't walk the talk. I know what to say, but I don't always have the energy to do it. You know why? Because I'm lazy. And if you're not feeling it in davening, you know why? Could be the same thing. Could be because you're lazy. There could be other blockages, but one of the main blockages is laziness. The laziness turns into what? Habits that are just that. They're heavy, they're uninspired, they're unmotivated, and they begin to lack meaning other than the feel, the I don't know, all the people who are running to do mitzvahs that don't, if you ask them, like, what are you feeling? They're like, I don't know. I have to do it. 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 No, actually, you don't have to daven if you're not feeling it. It's just they used to get ready to feel like in the olden days, when they would, the Gemara talks about a person who prayed a second time, and the second time must have been Musaf. The Gemara says, well, maybe they were davening again because they didn't have kavanah the first time. Like, do you think these great rabbis would even begin to daven if they weren't in the right mental state? They were, of course they were. So that's the first thing. That's the first thing. The first thing is we got to stop being just in, this is all what Kotzk is all about, but not just doing things because that's what we do. That's our habits. That's like we enter into them unmeaningfully and unspiritually. We need to be inspired. My friends, what do you think I'm doing Brachos with you for? This is really all about getting inspired and davening. This is really all part of that. It's just show you that every part of the rabbi's institution of every word of prayer and every halacha is full of meaning, is full of beauty, and full of awesomeness. And there's what I'm teaching you is 1/billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a billionth of a billionth. It's really infinity. It's really infinity we're talking about here. Okay, that's number one. Number two, which is also number 8 of our top 10, is learning how to speak with Chen to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. There's a concept of Dvarim Hayosim in Halev Nechlasim El Halev. Things that come from the heart go into the heart. And what that means is that it gets back to love. If you don't speak lovingly to your partner, so then it's all business. It's all like, do the laundry, do the dishes, do the this, do the that. Did you do this? Did you do the taxes? Did you do that? It's utilitarian. It's enough to coexist. If you raise your children with just like, how did you do on the test? And that's all you want to know. If you don't give them any love, if you don't tell them that you love them unconditionally, you're a lousy parent. Of course, you also have to condition them as well to train them between the right and wrong, but you have to give them a healthy dose of unconditional love, that you love them unconditionally. There's another part of you that teaches them the difference between right or wrong. You have love on one side of you, and differences between good and bad on the other side, and they have to get a healthy dose of both. You got to give love. Okay. It's the same thing with davening. If you're not davening with Chen, the simple pshat is you have to ask God. Let me grab the Gemara here. I'm not going to try to show it to you because that messed it up before. Sorry, guys. It just must be Min HaShamayim. There's so many things that are beyond my understanding right now. So this is one of the smallest of them. This one is the Rabbanan say, Kol misha ina omra b'lashon tachnunim. It's when what's kava? What's the way not to daven? When you don't ask Hashem, lashon tachnunim is like a language of requesting, but it's the word requesting is not an accurate translation. It has the root of it as chen, not requesting with grace and charm. So what I'm understanding it is, in the space of Rav Nachman, is that davening is all about chen. It's all about having a relationship with God. And a relationship with God is having like charm in God's eyes, and that gives you the power to daven. And the epitome of that is Rabbi Hanina ben Dosa, who had the ultimate amount of chen. The more chen you have, the more you can just really ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu for what you want. If you have limited chen, you have to follow the rules of what you ask. There are rules, for example, that say that you can't make a too hard of a request to God. Like you can't ask God for things with an expectation, because that's the beginning of illness. There's this concept that if you ask God for something with a concreteness to the request, that you'll come to be depressed because you won't necessarily get it. God doesn't guarantee that He'll give you what you ask for. So you thinking that because you asked, you deserve to get it, will lead you down the wrong path. Unless you're like Hanina ben Dosa, unless you are on such a high level. For the rest of us, we have to work our way up there. So that's number 8, which is about creating a intimate way of talking to God. That's the type of way my grandfather would daven. It's just that he had the intimacy with God. Now, part of intimacy, real love, is when you're with a partner that's like, you're not sharing that love with somebody else. So that's what gives it its intensity. So when you really become an Eved Hashem, when you become a servant of God, you give yourself over to God, that will help you create the chen that you need in your tefillah. So that's the second way of davening. The third way of davening, my friends, I hope somebody is listening to me. I don't mean just listening. I mean like is going to hear me here. The third way of davening is Rabbi and Rabbi Yosef the Amitavayu Kol She'enu Yachol Chadish Bo Davar. If you want to know what you need to do, you have to be mechadish something. Because if you're not mechadish is you have to create a new part of the prayer every time you pray. Because if you don't renew prayer by creating one part of it, one element of it that's unique to you, so then you're just reading the words out of the siddur. The siddur is a very nice siddur, but where are you in it? So I encourage everybody, when you're saying Shema Kolenu, Our Rachman, Shema Kolenu, the Art Scroll has like 2 suggested things that you could ask for. Like one of them is for health, another one is for parnasa. But those suggestions are, you could ask for anything that you need. It's not a time to praise God, Tosha says, but to ask like whatever you need. So the truth is, in any of the in-between prayers, before you say Baruch Atah Hashem, let's say Rofei Chole Am Yisrael, you could add in the bakasha of who needs a refuah shlema. You could add in the words in those at that point that are personalized. So the third answer to having meaningful prayers is to learn the halachas of how you could put in personal parts. There are right ways to do it, and start doing it. The Gemara acknowledges that for some people it's hard to do because it confuses them. So keep that in mind, but learn how to do it. Talk to your rabbi. I've had times where I sat down with people and told them how to do this, and they came back to me many years later, said that was the most meaningful thing they ever learned from me, maybe just overall. I mean, it's a very simple thing, but this idea, this permission to be mechadish davar, and not just permission to do it, but it might be one of the things that's critical to have a meaningful tefillah. So it's very important. And number 4, which is the last of the 10 of our top 10, is Altas Tfilas Rakava means make sure to daven in the right time. If you want to avoid making your prayers too, not uninspired. How do you inspire your prayer? Daven as the sun is coming up in the morning, when the sun just rises up from wherever it's rising up from, and as it's about to drop into wherever it's about to drop into. Those are very intense, naturally beautiful times. They also represent the whole tefillah is fashioned, really, Tzadik says, after the changes in nature of day and night, similar to the Kriya Shema. Look in the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs for the mitzvah of Kriya Shema to understand what I'm saying better. So what this to me means is that there's a certain rhythm of the sunrise, sunset in nature. It's beautiful. It's awesome. God forbid, we don't worship the sun. We don't bow to the sun. Quite the contrary. But at the same time, we sink in our tefillot with the majesty of the world. So it's a subtle but very big difference. We're not nature worshipers. We're worshiping God that creates nature. But we take nature itself and recognize that it comes from the Rebbeinu Shalom. We don't worship it. We worship God. But having this kind of like, whether it's that practice or vasikin, these are powerful tools to kind of help us align. So that's about 4 ways to make your tefillah more meaningful. I hope somebody is hearing me. If this helps one person daven, then it's all worth it. Thank you for listening. And it is Yom HaShoah tonight and tomorrow. So it's a very, I don't know if you could tell, I've been a little bit emotional, and it's because davening is important for me, but it's also because it's Yom HaShoah, and I'm about to go on to the JCCs having a reading of names for Yom HaShoah, and the Carlebach Shul is participating at the 9:30 slot. So I'm about to do that. So thank you, everyone, for being there tonight.